to round us out is someone that's doing very innovative ecosystem work, poised from the city of San Leandro. Tony Batalla, please come up and join us and tell us about the smart city initiatives that you've been working on.
All right. Well, thank you, Seth. And thank you to James and Sunny for the opportunity to be here. I'm really honored and feel that it's a privilege to be here. Something about me I'll share that you won't read in my bio is I'm a Bay Area native. I'm from the East Bay. I was born in Mission District in San Francisco, and when we were young, we moved to Pittsburgh, and then here to Oakland. I went to Allendale for kindergarten, and then to San Leandro, an unincorporated San Leandro, where I grew up. And I grew up in a neighborhood where, as we got older, most of my friends, we didn't just not go to college. Most of us didn't even complete high school. I was lucky. I later got my GED, went to the University of San Francisco, studied information systems, and then went to UCLA Anderson and got an MBA. And so I do feel very, very privileged to have the opportunity to now run the IT department in San Leandro. And I remember when I got hired, the city manager told me, the higher up you go, the more you can influence the outcomes, the more ability you have. And it's true. And I think about that in the work that I do and what I'm doing now. And I just feel tremendously blessed to be able to do things that make a difference. And so I'm able to I get invited to go to conferences and speak about smart cities and what we could do at the government innovation level. But this one means more than all the others. And everyone here who's working on this issue and focusing on digital inclusion and what we can do in our communities to really go all the way, make sure no one's left behind and everyone has a chance, is more important, I think, than anything else that we can do. Nothing against these other initiatives, but this one matters more. And this is the one that whenever my time is done in government, I'm going to look back on and hopefully be the most proud of, because hopefully I'll have made a difference. So this is, and everybody give yourself an applause, because everyone here, and I think some of these stories, how inspirational they are, really touches your heart. So this is the San Leandro story. This is Smart Cities. I'm here to talk about our Smart City initiative, and I'll share that with you. It's kind of a journey to becoming a smart city. It's about planning. Ostensibly, we're talking about smart cities, but it's really about that strategic planning element. And so we went through a long process. We developed a smart city strategy and a fiber optics master plan, and that was a year-long effort to develop. But what we found through that is, what is a smart city? Before you can get there and you can do all the technology things and you can, put sensors everywhere and collect all this data and make all these great decisions, you kind of got to ask yourself, what is a smart city, and what does being a smart city mean to me and my community? And that's what we did. That's the question, the central question that we're trying to answer when we do this planning process is, what does it mean? And I'm a big advocate of defining it on your own terms. There's no one definition that you can create and you can just slap on and say, now we're smart. In fact, that's kind of a pejorative term. You mean everyone before you wasn't smart? Like all those great public works directors and IT directors who did all this work in the preceding decades, they weren't smart? So I don't like the term. In fact, I kind of reject it. But I do think the idea of it, the concept of a smart city, applying technology to solve modern problems, is key to what I'm going to do, key to what we're all trying to do. So you need to define it on your own terms, though. I think you can think about the technology, you can think about, all the whizzy, fun stuff that, we get caught up on, but what's most important is the outcomes. Don't lose sight of the outcomes. What are the outcomes that matter? And this is kind of some guidance from the National League of Cities, who did a really great paper on it, and they came back with these 3 key things. Focus on the outcomes, find ways to partner, and implement best practices. And that guides everything I try to do. And it's really simple. It's not like complicated. It's just taking a step back and saying, okay, if we follow this, this will get us to where we want to be. So we came up with a framework right here. And so this framework is going to guide our smart city planning. And at the top, you'll see regionalization. That's something very important. I want to park the idea I'll come back to in a second. Underneath that is organization. That's the city itself. That's our internal institution, right? Building that innovation capacity, working across silos, making partnerships with other departments. The IT department shouldn't be doing this alone. In fact, if we do it alone, we're going to fail. It needs to be throughout the entire city. So you need the organization, data and analysis. You're going to build a lot of data. You need to be able to analyze it, make data-driven decisions. But in those vertical banners, those are the use cases, right? That's where we're going to go out and apply, whether it's transportation or it's public safety or it's economic development. And we're going to apply smart projects to all of those. Underpinning them are your networks, your communication systems, your wireless and your fiber optics, and those need to be secure and resilient. So that's a framework for being a smart city. And that's what we've developed in San Leandro, and it's guiding our implementation. I'll share with you a few of our smart city initiatives. The first one's public Wi-Fi. We're very proud of our public Wi-Fi system. We now have, every month, 13,000 devices connecting. For a city with a population of 90,000, 13,000 devices is quite a bunch. We transmit over 2 terabytes of data a month on the system. Now, if you were paying for that on a cellular plan, even at $10 a month, I don't know what the 2 terabyte a month data plan is, but I'm pretty sure it would be pretty expensive. I mean, that's probably tens of thousands of dollars in free bandwidth that we're giving away. Is it enough? I don't think so. We're a gigabit city. We have a gigabit internet connection. We use our own fiber optic network to connect directly to a data center and get lowest cost gigabit bandwidth we can. But the city, and even the public Wi-Fi system, only uses about 1/5 of that, which means that every month, 4/5 of our bandwidth we're not using. And I could think of the analogy of farmers who grow apples, and they grow these big apples and they have the surplus, but they have to get it to where the apples are needed. They need to get it to the market. So you have this whole supply chain in the middle to distribute those apples. And sure enough, at a certain point, the supply chain doesn't make the connection, and a lot of good apples go to waste. Well, that happens every month with our bandwidth. So part of my job is figuring out, what's that distribution mechanism? What is that supply chain to get the bandwidth to where it needs to be? And some of the stuff we're doing on that is working with low-income housing developers to try to get Wi-Fi throughout those buildings. I mean, the holy grail of public Wi-Fi is in-unit free Wi-Fi. We're working on that. We're not there yet, but we're making some progress. Adaptive traffic, I can make a joke about how I spent an hour in traffic this morning, and I was coming here to talk about transportation systems. I have no excuse for being late. I should have known better. But adaptive traffic signaling is one of the levers we have to combat that. It just means that the traffic signals adjust in real time based on the flow in the arterial, so they can use sensors to detect the cars and then automatically change the signaling patterns to adjust to help flow rates. It's proven to be you can increase your arterial travel time 40%. Certainly looking at that. Smart streetlights, we have a whole citywide smart streetlight network through the brilliance of our Public Works Director, Debbie Pollard, who put this in place. I could talk a whole day about this, but it's a big smart city initiative. This is the Internet of Things. You may have heard of IoT, but that's just this concept of all these devices that are going to be connected to the internet. We're talking about billions of devices in the future. Think of your Nests, thermostats, your smart refrigerators, everything will have a chip in it and be able to connect to the internet. Well, now our streetlights have a chip in it too. But I really want to talk about digital inclusion. So that's one of the initiatives in our study that came out loud and clear as something that we needed to address. And I'll share with you some statistics that came from the study. So in San Leandro, these are for San Leandro, 11.2% of residents have no computer at all whatsoever. 81.5% have a desktop or laptop. Some 11% have other computer. 75%, which means correspondingly 25% are living with only a handheld computer. Those are sizable numbers, right? That illustrates and attacks to the state numbers in San Leandro. What about internet? 22.4% of residents in San Leandro do not have broadband internet at home. More than a fifth of the people in my community don't have internet, but we're a gigabit city. We're a smart city, right? We got fiber optics, public Wi-Fi, but yet 22% of people aren't connected. That's what this is about. And of course, it gets worse as you go by income. So as you get to households with less than $10,000, 70% of people don't have broadband internet at home. 70% of people less than $10,000 in San Leandro don't have broadband at home. Well, what can a city do? What's the role of a city in this? Is there even a role? It's a valid question. It's a philosophical question and also a practical question. Is there even a role for the city? I argue there is, absolutely. But I think it's fair to ask, what can a city do? And particularly, what can a city do when you're facing pension obligations, which are crowding out funding sources, and public safety funding is crowding everything out? You have no money. Your city leaders are telling you to find ways to save. And you're like, no, we need to spend more because we need to. That's how we're going to make a difference. So those are the constraints that I look at. And probably one of the most important things in my job is figuring out how to break those constraints. So I spent a lot of time coming up with another framework, right? It's very complicated on how I could do that and what the role of a city is. Although this is it. I was quite happy with how it scanned out. It looks good. But essentially, it's partnerships. Cities don't do it alone. I'm not going to figure this out on my own sitting in my office at work, and suddenly I'm going to solve the digital divide in San Leandro. I'm going to partner with Seth and James. They have a digital inclusion solution. They even call it the digital inclusion solution. It's like, well, that's what I want. Why don't I just bring them to San Leandro? And so that's what we did. We put together an agreement, and Tech Exchange will be the exclusive recipient of all of our surplus computers. And we're working with the San Leandro Public Library to build a tech fair, which, plug the date, is December 8th. It's tentative, but all signs are a go. So we'll host a tech fair, and we'll have 125 households come, get a free computer, get the wraparound services. And this will be what I think is the beginning of some very important and influential outcomes. This is how we're going to solve it. It's community partners like Comcast and Internet Essentials, and making sure that residents are aware of this and can get it, going directly to them. But it's also public Wi-Fi and distributing it. We're also working with the public library to partner with Mobile Beacon and launch a lending hotspot program. So it's all these different things, all these different arrows in the quiver. And it's using all of them to put together a cohesive program and saying, we're not going to do it alone. We're going to do it through partnerships. So the parting thoughts are, plan first, have a strategic plan, think about the strategy and apply it in your community. Partner internally, IT, Public Works, everyone's got to work together. But also think regionally. Remember I said to park that idea of regionalism. So this is really important. Transportation, right? I said, oh, well, it took me an hour to get here. I only live 12 miles away, right? That transportation doesn't care about the political boundaries of San Leandro and Oakland, or the whole Bay Area for that matter. It is a regional problem, and it takes a regional approach to solve. So does digital inclusion. It doesn't respect the boundaries that we artificially create. So that's what thinking regionally is, and our application of it is that we've created an East Bay Interagency Tech Alliance. And that is a partnership with the City of San Leandro, the City of Oakland, City of Alameda, City of Hayward, City of Berkeley, interagencies like BART, East Bay MUD, the East Bay Regional Parks District. And it's to come together and start to identify where are the opportunities? How do we connect our networks together? How do we build broadband systems that span the region and can be used for every single one of these use cases? Transportation, public safety, digital inclusion. This is very nascent. We're very early on it. But I'm hopeful that these types of partnerships, this type of alliance, will help us work together instead of being in a silo. What if my system doesn't work with your system? Shouldn't interoperability be like a fundamental tenet of city systems in a region? I think so. So we've built a charter to explain just that. These are the things we want. When you guys go out and do an RFP and you get a brand new finance system, invite us too. We might partner on that. We might get better pricing working together instead of going it alone. We end up with the same systems anyway most of the time. It's the same pool of vendors. So let's combine our buying power and let's combine our thinking power and work together. So that's what the regionalism approach is. Define SMART on your own terms, which I mentioned. Focus on outcomes that matter to your city. It's different. It's okay if your smart city plan looks different than ours because you're building one for your community, and it the challenges there may be different than mine. Don't leave your residents behind. That's the key. That's the whole thing here. And finally, build those partnerships external as well, because we can't do it alone and we shouldn't do it alone. And that's something through this little journey that I'm on, I'm really starting to understand, is that, I can't just bust all those constraints. I can't pull all those levers by myself. People like Seth and James have it figured out. As James says, they got a better mousetrap. It's about bringing that mousetrap where you need it, and then just finding the constraints to them being in your community and then breaking those constraints so that they can come and flourish. And that's what I see the role of cities in doing this. So that's my presentation. Thanks to everyone for this opportunity. Again, this issue and this community here means more to me than the next Smart City conference I'll be at, where I'll be talking about variants of the same thing. So thank you for the opportunity.